They promised to visit. 9 years have passed, and I'm still waiting. I still remember the day I became a father. The way my daughter gripped my finger like I was her whole world. That was the first time I felt truly needed. My little Sarah, with her bright, curious eyes, peering up at me from her bassinet. It felt like yesterday, a warmth that still sometimes makes my old heart ache. But then I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the window, and I see the lines etched deep around my eyes, the silver in my sparse hair, and I know too many yesterdays have passed. This room, with its faded floral wallpaper, the persistent hum of the fluorescent lights, and the ever-present scent of antiseptic, has been my world for so long now. 9 years. Can you believe how long it's been since I first stepped through those doors? My hand still aching from where my son David had gripped it, promising to call every week. "We'll be back, Dad," he'd said, his voice thick with a promise that felt real in that moment, a promise that has echoed in this silence ever since. That promise, it was just one of many I'd lived by, one of many I'd made myself. My name is Walter Anderson. I spent most of my life building, not just houses as a carpenter, but a home, a life for my family, Sarah, David, and my dear Evelyn. She was the anchor, the quiet strength that held us all together. I remember the late nights, the early mornings, the calluses on my hands that never quite faded. I'd take on extra shifts, work weekends, sometimes even holidays, just to make sure they had what they needed, what they deserved. Evelyn wanted Sarah to go to a good college, something neither of us had the chance for. So, every extra dollar, every bit of sweat went into that fund. There were times I was so bone-tired I could barely lift my hammer, but then I'd picture Sarah's bright smile, Evelyn's gentle nod of approval, and I'd find the strength to keep going. It wasn't a sacrifice, not really. Not when you love someone so much that their dreams become your own. We lived a simple life, but it was full of laughter and purpose. Summers were spent at the lake, splashing in the cool water, building with Sarah and David, their small hands sticky with ice cream. Evelyn would pack a picnic basket, always with her famous lemonade. I remember one 4th of July, David, he must have been 6, lit a sparkler and his eyes just widened with pure wonder as the sparks flew. Sarah, ever the cautious one, stood a little behind him, giggling. Those were the moments that truly mattered, the ones I held on to tight. And Evelyn, she had this way of making even the most mundane things feel special. A quiet evening on the porch swing, her head resting on my shoulder, the crickets chirping. We didn't need grand gestures or expensive trips, just each other. We built our world brick by brick, moment by moment, always together. The years spun by, as they always do, faster than you ever imagine they will. Sarah went off to college, just like Evelyn dreamed. We used to drive down to visit her, packed into our old station wagon, me and Evelyn and David. Those drives were long, but filled with singing along to the radio, and Evelyn pointing out every pretty landscape. Sarah blossomed there, becoming this smart, confident young woman. And David, he found his passion in engineering. He was always tinkering with things, pulling apart old radios and putting them back together. I remember him showing me his first blueprint for a small engine, his face alight with pride. I didn't understand half of it, but I understood the joy in his eyes. Seeing my children thrive, building their own lives, making their own way. That was the real reward for all those long hours and aching hands. Evelyn and I, we just watched them, our hearts full, thinking we'd done a pretty good job. We thought our future was set, a quiet, comfortable slide into old age with our children. Nearby. Then came the quiet years. The house felt a little too big once the children moved out, the silence a little too loud. But Evelyn and I, we settled into a new rhythm. Long walks in the park, morning coffee on the porch, reading the newspaper together. We'd talk about the kids, their jobs, their growing families. Sarah married a good man, Mark, and they had 2 beautiful children, Emily and Thomas, my grandchildren. Oh, the joy of holding them, hearing their tiny voices. David found a wonderful woman too, Lisa, and they had little Lily. I remember teaching Thomas how to whittle a stick, just like my own father taught me, and Emily, she had Sarah's eyes, full of curiosity. Lily was a tiny whirlwind, always laughing. Those visits, those snippets of their busy lives, were the sunshine in our days. Evelyn and I would sit, watching the grandchildren play, and sometimes she'd just squeeze my hand and whisper, "We did good, Walter," and I'd squeeze back, knowing exactly what she meant. But time, it has a cruel way of stealing things, little by little. First, it was Evelyn's memory, a flicker here, a forgotten name there. Then the doctors told us it was something more, something that would take her away from me, piece by piece. Alzheimer's. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Watching her fade was the hardest sacrifice I ever made, harder than any overtime shift, any missed holiday. Her bright eyes slowly dimmed, her gentle voice became confused, then quiet. There were days she didn't know me, days she called me Dad, mistaking me for her own father. It tore at my heart, every single time. I became her caregiver, her shadow, her memory. I learned to cook, to clean, to bathe her, things I'd never imagined doing. The house became filled with the soft sounds of my efforts, and the agonizing silence of her fading mind. David and Sarah would visit, their faces etched with sadness, offering help. But I couldn't let them. This was my last act of love for Evelyn, to be there, to hold her hand, even when she didn't know who was holding it. The day Evelyn left me was like a piece of my own soul being torn away. It was a quiet morning, the sun just barely filtering through the curtains. She just stopped breathing. Peaceful, they said, but there was no peace in my heart. The house, once too big, now felt utterly cavernous, an echo chamber of memories. Every object, every chair, every faded photograph, screamed her absence. The silence, which had grown accustomed to her quiet movements, became deafening. I remember sitting in her favorite armchair for hours, just holding her shawl, breathing in the faint scent of her perfume. It was then, in that suffocating silence, that the loneliness truly began to set in. My children were there, of course, for the funeral. They hugged me tight, told me how sorry they were. Sarah cried, and David looked lost. They asked me to come stay with them, just for a while, but I clung to the house, to the phantom presence of Evelyn, unable to let go. I truly believed I could manage. I truly believed they would visit, often. For a few months, they did. Sarah would call almost every day, checking in, asking if I needed anything. David would drop by on Saturdays, bringing groceries, fixing that leaky faucet I'd been meaning to get to. He even tried to teach me how to use that newfangled computer, bless his heart. It was slow going, but it was something. It felt like we were navigating this new Evelyn-less world together. But then, slowly, imperceptibly at first, the calls became less frequent. The Saturday visits turned into bi-weekly, then monthly. "Dad, I'm swamped at work," David would say, or "Mom, the kids have a soccer game," Sarah would explain. I understood, of course. They had their own lives, their own responsibilities, their own growing families. I didn't want to be a burden. I told them I was fine, that I was managing. I even tried to sound cheerful, though the cheer felt thin and brittle. I was just proud of them for all they had achieved. I tried to convince myself that their infrequent presence wasn't a sign of neglect, but merely a testament to their busy, successful lives. The truth, however, started to chip away at that conviction. I'd sit by the phone, willing it to ring, watching the minutes turn into hours, the hours into days. Holidays became the hardest. Thanksgiving, Christmas. These were always times for family, for laughter, for the warmth of being together. After Evelyn, they were just days. I remember one Christmas, the first one without her. I'd cooked a small turkey, just for myself. The house was decorated with the same ornaments we'd used for decades, each one a tiny memory. I sat at the dining table, the one where we'd shared so many joyful meals, and ate alone. The silence was so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. I tried to call David, then Sarah, voicemail, both of them, busy with the kids, I imagined them saying. I tried not to let the bitterness creep in, but it was a cold, sharp feeling in my chest. It wasn't about the food or the presents. It was about the missing voices, the empty chairs, the absence of shared joy. That was when I truly felt the cold sting of being forgotten. It wasn't just the loneliness that started to wear me down. My body, once strong and tireless, began to betray me. My knees, after years of climbing ladders and kneeling on hard floors, started to ache constantly. My eyesight, which had always been sharp enough to read blueprints in dim light, grew fuzzy. Then came the fall. A simple misstep on the porch, a broken hip. That's what brought me here, to this old age home. David and Sarah came to the hospital, their faces pale with worry. "Dad, you can't stay alone anymore," Sarah had said, her voice gentle but firm. David nodded, looking at me with a sadness I hadn't seen since Evelyn passed. They talked about options, about assisted living, about round-the-clock care. I didn't want to be a burden, not really. So, I agreed. I told myself it was temporary, just until I recovered, just until I was strong enough to go home. That was 9 years ago. The promise of "we'll be back" echoed in my ears even as the doors closed behind me. This place, it's not bad, not really. The nurses are kind, the food is adequate, but it's not home. Home was Evelyn's laughter, the smell of sawdust, the sound of my children's footsteps. Here, every day is a carbon copy of the last. Wake up, breakfast, maybe a walk in the garden if the weather's good, lunch, a nap, dinner, then bed. The television is always on in the common room, a constant drone of news and soap operas, but no one really watches it. Everyone here is waiting for something, or someone. We all sit in our own little cocoons of quiet, remembering, or trying to forget. The physical pain of my hip healed, mostly, but the other pains, they linger. The ache in my chest from the loneliness, the dull throb of disappointment when the phone doesn't ring, the sharp pang of memory when I see a family visiting another resident, their faces alight with connection. The loss of dignity, that's another, quiet pain that gnaws at you. From being the one who provided, who fixed, who knew, I became the one who needed. Someone else helps me get dressed, reminds me to take my pills, even cuts my food sometimes. It's for my own good, I know, but it's a constant reminder that I'm no longer the man I once was. There are moments, though, fleeting glimpses of the old Walter. I'll see a cracked window or a loose floorboard, and my carpenter's instincts will flare, and for a second, I forget where I am, forget the years. Then a nurse will come by, offering a glass of water, and the illusion shatters. The worst part is the silence. Not just the absence of sound, but the absence of meaningful conversation. People here, they talk about their ailments, the weather, what's on TV. But no one talks about life, about dreams, about regrets. It's as if we're all just marking time, waiting for the final curtain. I try to fill the silence. I read, mostly old adventure novels, that take me far away from these four walls. Sometimes, I'll sit by the window and watch the world outside. The cars rushing by, the children playing in the park across the street. They live their lives, full of energy and purpose, unaware of the quiet, forgotten souls watching from behind glass. I write letters too, to Sarah and David, though I rarely get a reply. Just simple updates, reminiscing about a shared memory, or asking how the grandchildren are. I don't complain, never do. I just want them to know I'm still here, still thinking of them. Sometimes I imagine Evelyn sitting beside me, her hand in mine, and I tell her about my day. It's a small comfort, a way to keep her alive in my mind. These little rituals are my anchors in this sea of sameness, small acts of defiance against the crushing weight of being alone. The holidays are still the hardest, even here. The staff tries, bless their hearts. They put up decorations, play festive music, organize little gatherings, but it's not the same. It's never the same. I see other residents' families arrive, their faces bright with smiles, carrying gifts and sharing stories. The laughter echoes through the halls, a stark contrast to the quiet ache in my own chest. I tell myself it's fine, that it's just another day. But then I see a little girl, no older than Emily was when she last visited, hugging her grandfather tight, and a wave of longing washes over me. I miss the chaos of Christmas mornings, the tearing of wrapping paper, the scent of Evelyn's gingerbread cookies. I miss the arguments over which football game to watch, and David's bad jokes. Most of all, I miss the feeling of being needed, of being at the center of someone's joy. My health has continued its slow decline. The aches are deeper now, more persistent. My steps are slower, more shuffling. The nurses check on me more frequently, their concern a gentle reminder of my fragility. I've seen others come and go in this place. Some recover, some don't. Each empty bed is a somber note, a quiet whisper of what awaits us all. I find myself thinking about death more often now, not with fear, but with a strange kind of curiosity. What will it be like? Will Evelyn be there, waiting? I hope so. I hope she recognized me. There's a peace in that thought sometimes, a release from this endless waiting. Yet, there are still moments of hope, small, flickering embers in the darkness. A particularly vibrant sunset outside my window, a kind word from a nurse, a memory of Evelyn so vivid it feels real. These moments, however brief, remind me that there's still beauty in the world, even if I'm experiencing it from a distance. I often reflect on my life, the choices I made. Did I work too much? Did I spend enough time with them when they were young? Would things be different now if I had done something differently? These questions circle in my mind, a relentless carousel of what-ifs. But then, I remember the feeling of Evelyn's hand in mine, the warmth of my children's hugs, the pure, unadulterated joy in their eyes when I lifted them onto my shoulders. No, I wouldn't change those sacrifices. My life was dedicated to them, and that was a life well lived. My greatest regret isn't the work, or the exhaustion, but the quiet expectation I held on to, the unspoken belief that they would remember, that the bond we forged would be unbreakable. It's not bitterness, not anymore, just a profound sadness for what has been lost, for the connection that frayed over time, worn thin by the demands of their own busy lives. Sometimes, I try to understand why. Why did their visits stop? Why did the calls become so rare? Did I do something wrong? Was I too quiet? Too undemanding? Did I make it too easy for them to forget? I remember a conversation with another resident, an old woman named Martha. Her children also rarely visited. She told me, they have their own lives, Walter. We raised them to be independent. And sometimes, independence means they just move on. It was a harsh truth, but there was a certain logic to it. They are busy, building their own homes, raising their own children, just as I did. The world moves fast, and the elderly, we often get left behind in its wake. It's not malicious, I don't think, just the natural, painful drift of life. Yet, it doesn't make the ache any less sharp, the silence any less heavy. It just explains it, in a way that's almost harder to bear. Despite the pain, there are moments of profound personal growth, moments where I feel a quiet strength within myself. I've learned to appreciate the small things, the warmth of a cup of tea on a cold morning, the way the light falls through the window at a certain time of day, the unexpected kindness of a nurse or a fellow resident. I've learned patience, a patience born of necessity, of waiting. And I've learned to forgive, not just them, but myself, forgiving them for the silence, and forgiving myself for holding on to expectations that perhaps were too high, too naive. I look back and see a man who poured his heart and soul into his family, and that man, Walter, he was good. He did his best. And in that realization, there is a quiet dignity that no faded wallpaper or antiseptic smell can take away. I may be forgotten by some, but I remember myself, and that counts for something. I often wonder about Sarah and David. Are they happy? Are their children thriving? I see snippets on the news, stories of families, and I imagine my own, living their vibrant lives. I hope they think of me sometimes, even just for a fleeting moment. I hope they remember the lake, the sparklers, Evelyn's lemonade. I hope they tell Emily, Thomas, and Lily about their grandfather, the carpenter who built things, who loved their grandmother fiercely. I don't want their pity, just a flicker of remembrance. This waiting, it's become a part of me, like an old habit. Every knock on the door, every unfamiliar voice in the hall, my heart still does that little flutter of hope, only to settle back into its familiar rhythm of quiet resignation. It's a strange existence, living in the space between memory and absence, between what was and what will never be again. And so, here I am, at the end of my story, or perhaps, just the end of my telling. If you've listened to my quiet words, if you've felt even a sliver of what I've felt, then I ask you, truly ask you, to hold your loved ones close. Don't let the demands of life, the rush of the world, drown out the quiet voices of those who shaped you, who loved you unconditionally. Make that call, pay that visit, say those words of appreciation while you still can. Time is a thief, silent and swift, and regret is a heavy burden to carry. Cherish the simple moments, the quiet presences, the unspoken bonds. For one day, like me, you might find yourself in a quiet room, waiting for a promise that never arrives, and wishing you had just one more moment to say, I remember you, I love you, you were my whole world. Live a life with no empty chairs at the table of your memories. Farewell.